Stephen Meade again, back with another BullsEye Guy podcast, coming to you from sunny LA. I think you can actually see some of the light coming in our offices here, but a little late, but we're fortunate. I've got Christopher Attard on with us, coming out of Malta. Chris and I met a couple years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, through Iman and the whole AIBC and the blockchain world. And I know Chris was helping there, but he's also got a background in finance and doing some amazing things with a newsletter and really looking at Bitcoin and crypto as a trade asset, not, a lot of these things people don't understand. So excited to have you, Christopher. As always, just a little introduction on your background in terms of not only where we started. Let's go with where you and I started at the conference side, but then let's back up to your finance, and that'll move us forward to where we need to be.
Yeah, for sure. Cheers for inviting me, first of all. It's a good to come. So let's just dive straight into it. So basically, I used to work in the events section, especially mostly in Malta with AIBC and with Sigma. And that's kind of where we met and where we started organizing, all the events and all that stuff. So obviously with the AIBC section of things, I used to focus mainly on the finance side of things, because that's kind of where I was always interested in. And so that's kind of where things began and where they took off.
If you would, Christopher, real quick.
Yeah.
Because I want to get in the finance side, but a lot of people don't know about AIBC. So, just talk for a minute about what it was and how big. I mean, you guys ran really the premier global event around, blockchain stuff. Sure. So just talk about that for a moment.
No, for sure. I mean, and that still goes on, and it's still a huge success. And so basically, the IBC Summit is the Malta AI and Blockchain Summit. Before it was known as the Malta Blockchain Summit, and every time we've had it, we've had thousands of people. Like in 2017 or 18 was the first one. Yeah, the first one was in 18, and it was a huge success. We had thousands of people coming. I believe it was somewhere around 8,000 or 10,000 people, and they kept on becoming extremely popular. 2018 was the bear market, so there were a lot of interesting projects that, which as we know, some of these projects come and go, but I think the market has matured quite dramatically since that time, and now things have changed hugely this year. And so it's a massive, huge conference, one of the big ones, and it's still going on, still going strong. And so that's the event side of things. I used to organize the conference side of things, so that was my kind of my area. And before that, I worked at Devere Group. So I worked in finance basically, and I used to do a couple of mostly news reporting, but that's kind of where I had my the big background in finance. So that's kind of where I spent a few years there, and that's where I kind of learned a little bit about trading, a little bit about markets, and I started learning.
And what was that company? What did it do? Where's it located?
So yeah, I believe they're located in their back office is in Malta, but I'm not. They have it's a global company, so I'm not too familiar with what their operations are right now. But at the time, it was global. I think it still is, and basically they're a financial advisory firm. Obviously, you move on with your life. So, yeah. So that's kind of like where things started for me. Before that, since I'm kind of going in reverse here, before that, I was involved with Bitcoin. I think the first time I was involved in Bitcoin, I was extremely young. I think it was about 2013. My emails, because I searched out my email list, my emails from back then, and I used to have an account with Slashpool. And so that's where I kind of started mining a bit of Bitcoin and everything. That's where I got into it. I actually still have some. Well, I sold it actually, So that's kind of where things started. But I didn't know what I was doing back then.
When you first saw it, Chris, what was your early impression? What did you think it was? What was your interest in it? And I'm talking about Bitcoin in general.
No, I bought in the narrative, to be honest. I like the narrative. I still believe it. This idea that you have just completely unconfiscatable money that is censorship resistant, and that is not, cannot be controlled by any bank or any central bank or any institution for that matter, which is, I still believe this. I still think that in the coming years, we're going to have, Bitcoin is going to be the number one, everything's going to be denominated in Bitcoin. And I really do think this, and it might not be, you might still have a USD pairing, but ultimately, people will look to Bitcoin as the foundational unit of account. And I think that's going to happen. But then there's obviously a lot of interesting things that, there's the whole crypto world. And I think that crypto, this morning I tweeted something, basically that we need to start, understanding that crypto has various meanings and you can have various subtypes. And so there's a lot of cryptocurrencies, but not all of them are decentralized. Some of them are basically companies. So this is something that we need to just recognize as we move forward. And it's a really interesting landscape. I'm quite amazed that it exists, to be honest.
Yeah, and this will help us transition because I do this a lot too. There's a lot of confusion, I think, in the industry because the conflation of words like cryptocurrency. So I define blockchain as a technology that does a bunch of different things, whether it could be contracts, it could be crypto, it could be asset management. Like blockchain's the technology. Bitcoin to me is an asset. This is me personally. So to me, it's like a unit of gold. And some people like that comparison, some don't. Most of the cryptocurrencies to me are penny stocks. They're glorified, tradable assets. They may or may not be tied to equity. If you invest in a penny stock in the US, if that company goes under, you don't get money back. Like there's a lot of confusion. They're not all set up, and most of them aren't really ever going to be currencies. So with what you're doing, Christopher, what's your explanation if somebody says, what is Bitcoin? And then if somebody says, well, what's the difference between Bitcoin and a cryptocurrency? How would you explain it? Because I want to transition that into kind of what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very tough question. I mean, most of the time, and I don't want to sound cynical here, but if it's someone who has no idea what they're getting into, I would just say, assume that everything else is a scam except Ethereum and Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I know this sounds bad, but the thing is that people tend to get that 2017 reminiscence. And they believe that, every single coin is going to go to 100x or whatever. And they just end up dumping a lot of money. And that's how people lose their money, basically. So short of, there's a lot of good projects. There's very cool projects that I'm interested in as well, that I trade. And not even that I have a holding portfolio as well for certain cryptocurrencies as well. But when it comes to, it depends what kind of audience you're talking to, basically. And since I'm kind of, with my newsletter, it's a bit difficult, but I try to cater to a broad audience, which is why I have two different sections where I kind of talk a little bit about the important news and then I go into the technical details. So I kind of try to bridge the gap a little bit.
So let's,
go
ahead.
So I was kind of so basically the idea is that, well, to explain Bitcoin, I would say it's unstoppable currency. It's not controlled by any government, and if anything, now I think the biggest argument for Bitcoin is it's an inflationary hedge. It's Chamat Palihapitiya likes to say it's schmuck insurance, and I agree with that. It's insurance money against the mad scientists at the ECB and the Federal Reserve.
Yeah. So let's do it this way, Christopher, because again, it was a trick question because I deal with the same thing you do. I've got a broad audience of people who have no idea what it is, people that think it's a scam. But the conversation I want to focus this on is either A, people who understand it already and are looking at ways to monetize and trade it moving forward, which is a lot of what you're doing, or within the audience that I have that I want to better understand it. To me, there's a correlation to stocks, to assets, to trading, whether it's Bitcoin or the other crypto tokens. And that's sort of what you framed your newsletter and a lot of the analytics around, is not to the novice. You're doing things at a much deeper level for a broader audience.
So when it comes to the technical side of things, I do tend to get into the different kind of pairings with BTC as well.
Yeah.
And so, but obviously my intention, I do value Bitcoin a lot. And so yeah, with regards to trading, you just have to look at the charts.
Right.
all
And so
the
that's what
time.
I want to talk about. Let's transition to that because there's enough people out there trying to explain Bitcoin to the masses.
Yeah.
I don't want Bitcoin to the masses in this conversation. I want it to and even though MicroStrategy and Michael, there's big companies, but I want to find a way to educate the industry, the financial industry, to come in and look at this as a new asset class with charts and trends and statistics and things like that. So talk to me a little bit about how you transitioned with the newsletter, how you started, what your thought process is of what your newsletter does and the information you want to share.
Right. So the idea is obviously, I mean, I am seeking alpha ultimately. So that is obviously important. Bitcoin has a level of volatility, but it's not, it's decreasing. The volatility in Bitcoin, at least the way I see it, is kind of decreasing. And then you have altcoins. You have a lot of them, and their volatility is quite insane. And so when I look at the various pairings, my intuition is that it depends on how you want to look at it. So for example, I'm trying to stack more Bitcoin. That is my personal goal, right? So I believe that Bitcoin is an extremely important asset to have moving forward. And so you can do quite a lot with by looking at the pairings, different pairings with Ethereum versus Bitcoin as well. And narratives play a big role as well. It's not just the technicals. I mean, every time just recently I started looking at Cardano more, just because they're very interested in pushing the DeFi narrative, which might ignite something here. So I think that narratives are important in the industry. That is something that I look at quite a lot. With regards to the technicals, mostly I look at basic price action analysis. That's one of the main things that I look at, and various on-chain metrics, such as the stablecoin supply ratio. So that gives you a very good indication as to how much purchasing power there is within the industry. I just wrote an article actually just this afternoon about Tether increasing hugely in its supply, actually not supply, its market cap. It's 20 billion right now, of a total of 26 billion in the entire stablecoin market cap. So that informs quite a lot of decisions, at least long term. So it depends on what kind of time frame you're looking at as well.
Yeah, so let's make this a somewhat technical question, but actually broad enough for people in the finance industry. So again, I always use a term I call retrospective evolution. Right? I like looking at things retrospectively that have either worked or people will understand, and then evolve it into the new technologies and say, hey, here's what's cool about this. So if we talk about Tether for a moment, Tether in my simple world or simple is Tether's like a US dollar. So if we look at the traditional world said, hey, I think there might be a recession coming, or I think there might be inflation. I'm going to move my asset holdings into cash. And there's people that will move their money to cash because they think the markets might drop. They think inflation's coming. That's in essence, I think, what you were saying earlier when, again, this is for people who, a lot of my audience is not people who understand what a tether is. So that's why I wanted to explain it. But it's basically, there's people moving their money into Tether, which is tied to or pegged to a US dollar.
For sure.
Which is similar to moving it into cash. And once it sits in Tether, it can easily be deployed across multiple assets that somebody may be interested in.
Yeah, exactly right. So that is why it is so popular. And obviously, you have the guarantee of the US dollar while having the freedom of basically transacting it anywhere at any time. And so Tether is extremely useful and even USDC now. USDC is picking up. It's at 3.2 or 3.3 billion. market cap. So it's also picking up. They're trying to position themselves as the more regulated, though I think that they're both regulated. So Tether is extremely useful, especially for traders. If you want to move money across various exchanges, there might be some kind of opportunities as well. That it can help quite a bit. And so Tether is this 1:1, US dollar pegged stablecoin,
and I've explained Tether before as types of stable coins, where it's easier for me to send money with Tether in an email than it is to go to the bank and do a wire transfer and all of the traditional banking. So
that will take much less time as well.
Much less time, less transaction fees. And for people who always talk about settlement time, I can email you Tether and it'll be in your account in 20 minutes. I can go down to the bank. It'll take me 20 minutes to get to the bank if I get in and COVID. So speeds there. Let's back up to the point of prior to Tether, because again, you said things that I want to share, but I kind of have to build this correlated bridge. Trading something like Bitcoin, when you're looking at trends, again, I go back to, it's like trading Apple stock. It's not exactly the same, but it's like trading Apple or possibly trading gold. If you're trading gold, you're looking at trends and potential buyers and volume across these networks. Explain, if you would, sort of what you look at when you're trading just Bitcoin as the asset first. We can talk altcoins later. But again, you've got all your monitors behind you. You're set up like a trade desk. Talk to me on the trade desk side. What do you look for and how does it work?
Well, it depends what the goal is, obviously. But the first thing I'm looking at if I'm looking to start a trade is, well, you start with the long-term trend, right? You start with the long-term, you start with the monthly, weekly, daily, and you keep on going down from there, depending on what time frame you want to trade. So that's the first thing that I do. And price action is extremely important. I don't consider myself, I'm not like a guru, I'm still learning, so there's a lot of things that I still have to, to improve as well on my side. So I don't claim to be any kind of guru, but the things that I look at are, price action is something that I definitely look at. Volume across exchanges. So if I'm going to trade Bitcoin, I want to know what kind of volumes we're looking at, because volumes are, in my own estimation, important for confirming price action. And if you have disparate volumes against different exchanges, and depending on whether you're looking at spot or derivatives, and which ones of them you're trading, it's important to have that kind of confirmation. This is something that's quite, it's quite well known. So, if you have price trending up and you have no volume to back it up, then that's kind of a red flag immediately, and so these are the kind of things that you look for instantly.
Yeah. The trend is your friend, unless it's a false trend.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to lose your train of thought, Christopher, but can I ask you a question in this segment? And will you still be able to keep your train of thought to whatever your next point was?
Yeah, for sure.
So when you talk about volume, again, I correlate it back to the US. The US, we've got multiple exchanges. We've got the OTC, which is the penny stock, pink sheet, bulletin board. Very risky, high fluctuation. Just like crypto, a lot of projects may or may not make it in the bulletin board, but you have one exchange you can track volume. And you've got NASDAQ and you've got NYSE. Crypto's a different animal because you've got exchanges across the world. You've got the Binances and the big gorillas and the Bittrex, and then you've got the ZBXs in Malta, and you've got small ones. So when you say volume, is there one or two exchanges? Are you looking across multiple? If they are multiple, which ones? Is there a dashboard built yet that says, hey, here's volume across multiple exchanges? Like, how does the volume side work?
Well, I'm sure there's more to that than I probably know. But the way that I do it is I basically have a lot of Bitcoin USD pairings, and they're all on various exchanges. So the main exchanges that that we both know are the driving exchanges are Binance, Coinbase, Bitfinex is taking a bigger role now, Kraken. The big exchanges where most volume goes.
There's HitBTC, there's Bittrex, there's all kinds of
Bittrex. There's quite a few, and so sometimes you might even find that mostly across derivative exchanges that I see this is that when you're looking for a setup, you're kind of looking for basically you can actually tell sometimes that one exchange is actually trading against another. The traders on one exchange are trading against the traders on another exchange.
Against the exchanges.
Well, in a way, you have, for example, people on Binance, overwhelmingly shorting Bitcoin, and at the same time, you have people on Bitfinex. Normally, it's the Bitfinex whales that keep it running, who are just longing it, and so you see the ratio, which is just hugely different. And so you can actually see that sometimes you get massive volumes on one exchange. And ideally, the point of the trend setup is that ideally you have similar volumes on every exchange, and so that you don't raise the red flag.
Yeah.
So that's a very simplistic kind of thing.
That helps, because we looked years ago at building an HFT, a high frequency trading, again, just like the stock, but the exchange, the difference in pricing between the exchanges was big enough, but the settlement and speed and things like that was slow. So the volume is interesting. Let's move forward a little bit, because trends, again, I go back to penny stocks. To me are interesting. Not that I'm over glorifying them, but a lot of those projects are driven by press releases and publicity and pomp and circumstance and hype. The bigger stocks, on the stock exchange in the US, are driven by PE, price earnings ratio, and projections and things like that. Both of them, though, at a core, driven by publicity. So that publicity sometimes drives trends. What do you look at in terms of trends for things that are going on? And I'll give you just one quick example on mine. In Bitcoin, I think is fascinating. The number of new wallets, the number of people signing up for wallets means there's more potential demand of people trying to learn this new asset class. That's like a very simple trend I can get financial people to understand. There's more people signing up, just like in the early days of the internet, more people were signing up for trading, which means more people are going to trade. With the trends right now, what are some of the things you're looking at in terms of Bitcoin, tokens, the assets? Like where do you see it going?
So, I mean, Bitcoin is just going to do its thing. I think the trend is very clear. I think it's the safest bet you can take. I think anything under 20K is a good deal, and that's more or less how I see Bitcoin. So I think Bitcoin is mostly a closed chapter, in the sense that it's as close to it's going. It's not going to stop. I don't think it's going to stop. I'm quite heavily invested in Bitcoin, and I don't think it's going to stop. Well, that's at least what I'm doing. And obviously, there's not financial advice or anything. Yeah. So that's my kind of take on Bitcoin. When it comes to other cryptocurrencies, it really depends. For me, it's a question of narratives. So and I'm still very skeptical about DeFi tokens and all these various assets that are supposedly changing the world. So I'm still very skeptical, but at the same time, I'm open to trading it. So long as there's a market, I'll trade it. So it depends on what kind of whether you're looking at this long term or not. I don't want to get into a point where you do like something like in 2017 when a bunch of people just bought a bunch of coins that literally went bust a few months later.
That's why I said this is the whole penny stock side where a lot of go under.
Exactly.
And a lot of projects they just were never going to work. But I used to make the argument, people go, oh, well, you get equity with the stock, you don't with an altcoin. And I'm like, you buy a penny stock at 10 cents because you want to sell it at $1. You don't buy it
you're
because
trading
you
volatility.
have equity. It's appreciation and volatility. But you also said something interesting, Christopher, is a lot of this trading is not, it could be long-term, like Bitcoin and some of these are long-term, but a lot of the things you're doing with the newsletter and the trends are more trading. Can you buy an asset at X and sell it at X plus 1 or 2, and getting in and out and things like that? So I want you to pick one of the two I'm going to give you and talk to me about how you view the trends, what you would look at. Either Cardano, which the symbol is ADA, again, kind of like a stock, or Chainlink. And Link was getting a lot of publicity, though the symbol for Chainlink is LINK. Are you trading Chainlink or Cardano? And if you are, why and how do you evaluate them?
So Cardano, I actually just got out of a trade. But let's talk about Chainlink, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around Cardano and the entry point. So yeah, Link I think is interesting. It's I'm definitely looking at it. I think it has a lot of potential, especially since there are the Link Marines. So it has a very good narrative, has a strong base. They're not going anywhere, and so I don't see Link as I see it as one of the strong altcoins, and so that's kind of my perspective on that. I don't at a point I said when it was at like $17, I tweeted, I said, listen, it might go down to $5. Obviously I was a bit off on that, but then I kind of revised it. I said, listen, I'll buy again if it goes into like a single digit territory. And that was kind of because the thing is that it looked so much like the 2017 Bitcoin bull run. You could literally copy and paste the chart of Bitcoin 2017, and you could literally see it go. It was literally the same.
But again, the chart of 2017 when it ran all the way up, or the chart when it dropped? Because Link was at 15 and charting high.
It went to $20 actually.
Yeah, and I got suckered in too. I bought in at 14 and a half, thinking it would go to 40. And I still own it 14 and a half, and it's trading.
I still think that Link has a future. So I think we'll revisit all-time highs, but I don't think we're going to do it like maybe sometime next year when there's the next DeFi hype cycle. That's kind of what I'm looking at. So that's. I still think altcoins have a future. I think that the more cycles we have, and the more the less alpha there is. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. And especially I would like to see some of these projects to really emerge, to get, you can't keep burning the new people. You can't, this is something that I'm really annoyed with, you need to ultimately, there needs to be value. And I think that Link can do this with its, oracles and all the, it has some fundamentals going for it as well. And it has quite a few, negotiations that are ongoing. From a technical perspective, I'm a buyer under 10 for sure. And this is more like a medium to long term. I think we will revisit $20. At the moment, I'm mostly trading. If I trade it, I'll trade it like just for maybe 5 or 10%, and then I'm out.
So again, you use a word, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to put this clarity in, because you said from a technical perspective. You actually don't mean from a technology perspective. You mean from a technical perspective of the fundamentals of whether or not you think it's going to go up.
Well, I mean, it depends on so when we say technical, I mean, like normally technicals, we refer to, the charts.
Right. I just wanted to make that distinction, because
yes, of course,
the newsletter that you're writing is around the technicals, but it's not, because a lot of times when you say that, people are going to think the technology and they're like, oh, I don't understand it. This has nothing to do with technology. This is the technicals of data evaluation of whether or not Link, L-I-N-K, is going to go from 12 and a half to 20, or whether it's going to go from 12 and a half to 4.
Yeah.
Right. So you're looking at the technical metrics of
the technical metrics. Metrics for the thing is that, I mean, nobody can tell the future here. I mean, like we're all this is all about. I mean, it's all about risk management ultimately. So the question is, what kind of setup am I looking at here? And that's kind of what we want to look at. Is what's the risk to reward? And I like to buy people's fear. So if I see a lot of red, I'm looking for buys, and it depends on what kind of time frame you have. So again,
yeah, it's risk management, it's mitigation, and time frame's a big one.
Yeah, time frame is a massive one. I think it's huge. So, for example, I have two portfolios for Link. I have my HODL portfolio, which I just basically dollar cost average into. So every week or 2 weeks, it depends. I mean, like sometimes I don't always stick to the plan, which is not ideal. But the dollar cost averaging portfolio is where I basically just average into it, because I think that it's gonna probably take off. And I'm still anticipating another DeFi cycle. And at the end of the day, nobody can see the future. It might even stick, and if it does stick, then you really want to be in it. And if you're in it early, then that's good. And so obviously this is a question of evaluating new data as it comes in, because nobody can tell the future, but you can tell trends, you can tell what happened before, and you can use historical precedent, and you can use the data that you see on the charts to help, of course. But that doesn't mean that you're gonna necessarily win all the time. It's basically impossible.
But let's do this, Chris. In finishing up here, talk to me, if you would, about the newsletter, the information you put together, what you're sharing, and how people can get it.
So yeah, at the moment I write a newsletter every Monday and Wednesday. The newsletter is split into two sections. First, I pick a story that's the most interesting story that I think that exists for the week or for whatever is happening. Something that I think is relevant, because there's a saying that is basically show me the charts and I'll tell you the news. And I tend to believe it, but at the same time, news is a driver, and I still have that kind of discussion in between, so I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, so I kind of mix it up between the what's going on with respect to news. So normally I speak about anything got to do with CBDCs, for example. I think it's a very big topic. So I talk about the news, and then I have a technical section where basically I do some kind of analysis. Most of the time it's kind of like unscripted, because so I'll change time frames sometimes. So I won't always give the same time frame. I'll change it depending on what I'm looking at, on the day.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I look at mostly. I also write for a couple of other. I publish a few other publications as well, and I post everything on the Telegram channel and on Twitter. So that's kind of where you'll get everything basically. So everything that I write.
How do they find you, and how do they follow you? And we'll close this up and circle back. Actually, we're gonna close it up. How do they find you? And then I'll ask you one closing question.
Yeah, so you can go on chrisoncrypto.com. There's all my links there, and on Twitter, chrisoncrypto1. And you'll find me there. So yeah, that's it.
Telegram's the
Telegram is at Chris on Crypto. Yeah. I mean, I have so many, like there's contact at chrisoncrypto.com as well.
All right, great. So then I'm going to throw this last question out there. You don't have to answer it. And this is what newscasters usually do to put people on the spot, and people don't want to answer. Predictions for Bitcoin at the end, not of 2020, we're almost there. Predictions for Bitcoin at the end of 2021. And what do you think will be the bigger breakout altcoin between Link, Cardano, which is ADA, Tron, like out of the big ones? So give me a prediction if you want, Bitcoin 2021, and who the big winner percentage-wise, return-wise might be at the end of 2021.
That's a good. Can I give you a range?
Sure.
So I think Bitcoin, the conservative number is 50K. And I'm being very conservative here because I don't want people to have.
Yeah, that's why I said this isn't hype, and you aren't some Bitcoin enthusiast hoping. Like, these are trends and fundamentals. That's why I wanted it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 50K is a very conservative number. So I'll go with 50K.
Okay.
But I will not be surprised if it's at 100 or even 200K. Not surprised at all, because you get to a point where it will just start increasing by orders of magnitude.
One of the podcasts I did tells people, don't look at the price, just look at the percentage. If you can buy $100, that percentage is the same as the guy that can buy $100,000. So the price isn't relevant if you're a long-term investor. It's what percentage return do you think you'll get? So I like the putting it on the table there. Altcoin, if you were to pick one that might be the winner, just in terms of percentage.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I think it's between Ethereum and Cardano. I think if you could consider Ethereum an altcoin. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. Some people consider it an altcoin, some people don't. It's quite big now. I think Ethereum is going to take off hugely. In fact, I look at ETH, BTC quite a lot.
That's interesting because
I think Ethereum is going to take off.
Ethereum's already had the top range. It's trading now probably 500. It's hit 6, but it was 900, close to 1,000 before. So Ethereum already has that elasticity in of a higher price range.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, like, this is the thing. I've been saying it before as well, that, you know, most likely you're going to get the altcoin runs when Bitcoin gets closer or above all-time highs, and then when it like chills out a little bit, that's kind of when you start seeing capital flow into altcoins.
We'll see. Then my prediction on Ethereum was wrong. We had Ethereum investments at 900. It dropped. At 450, I kept asking the community, what should I do? And I didn't get good feedback. It dropped about 220. And I said, okay, I've got to sell. I can't take the risk of loss. And I thought Ethereum would actually be like an iPhone 1 version. I thought it was done. You couldn't build on it. And the next new hot thing was going to come up. Ethereum surprised me. It's back up 500, 550. You know, I think it could go up.
I think it will. This is not financial advice. Take care of your money.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just a conversation for sure. But I think Ethereum has quite a lot of potential, especially because of the narratives. The narratives behind it are very strong, and I think narratives play an important role.
Yeah, I think the publicity and the narrative is going to drive a lot of things. So, all right, Christopher, we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate you taking the time for Malta. I miss getting out there. I miss the island.
Sure.
Doing my virtual AIBC stuff with Joshua and the other AIBC guys isn't the same as there. So keep up the great work. I read the newsletter. I don't do a lot of the investing because we're in the industry ourselves, but I love the information and I wish you great success.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.